Hello, do you believe in the Santa rally in stocks? Or have you been told that you shouldn't invest in stocks in October because October has a terrible track record historically speaking? Well, in this video I show in a few minutes that ideas like Halloween is bad for stocks and Santa is good for stocks, pretty much like other beliefs about so-called historically speaking good and bad months in stocks, are probably better placed in the category of science fiction than anything else. So I am Jimmy Lepping, a psychologist and statistician with loads of interests in research, including the financial markets. And since a week or six ago, I also have my own YouTube channel. So what I'm going to do in this video is use the monthly performance of the S&P 500 since early 2001 as expressed in a percentage gain or loss in a month. And although I'm using the S&P 500 in this video, you will be able to get more or less the same findings with other stock indices, such as I did a year ago with several European indices, because although different indices are not perfectly correlated, they are strongly correlated. So here you see the actual S&P 500 value for the last 274 months with different colors for different years. And on the right you see a so-called autocorrelation function and so-called box tests for autocorrelation. And while basically in this data set you have a very strong autocorrelation, which is perfectly normal for a time series of this kind. However, when we look at the percentage of difference that is gain or loss in a given month, the scatter plot looks like this, with a cloud much more centered around something just above zero. And in this case, the autocorrelation function and box tests indicate that the autocorrelation we have when we deal with actual S&P 500 values is no longer present when we deal with month-to-month difference. Reason for showing these autocorrelation functions is that they facilitate the analysis of this kind of data quite a lot. Next, we see for every month in the year, January being 1 and December being 12, the number of months, so 23 in all cases except for December, because this month is still in progress. And since we use differences between months since early 2001, we do not have January of 2001 in this data set. So 22 months for January and December, 23 months for all the other months in the year. And we see the average and median percentage change in each month, as well as the standard deviation and the worst and best change in each month over this nearly 23-year time period. And then below we see these outcomes for all months together. So we see that on average there is a slight gain of a bit over 0.5%, and that the median change is just over 1% in this period of 274 months. But we also see that there are not only differences between months, but much more so there are differences within each month. And this chart shows this pattern visually. Here we see the average change for each of the 12 months connected by a line. And for each month, the actual observed differences in dots and the 95% confidence interval with bars around the average. And clearly we see that the differences within months are much bigger than the differences between months in this time period of nearly 23 years. And when we use appropriate statistical models to estimate how much the calendar months explain, we see that only about 7% of the variation in performance in this time window of nearly 23 years is explained by the different months of the year. Although 7% isn't nothing, it is not such a percentage either that one could easily justify decisions regarding buying or selling stocks just because we happen to be in a certain month in the year. In fact, when we look at October, we see that despite the poor performance of that 1 point below, which was in October 2008, still, October on average over these 23 years has been one of the better months, which flies in the face of the popular wisdom of the crowd that, duh, you shouldn't be in stocks in October because October is a bad month for stocks. This wisdom just doesn't receive empirical support, and of course, you cannot justify such a claim of October being a bad month just because once upon a time, 15 years ago, there was a bad October. Things just don't work that way. And interestingly, when we look at December, we do not see any evidence of a particularly great performance of stocks that could be baptized the Santa Rally. Okay, it is true that definitions of the Santa Rally vary quite a bit. Some people define the Santa period as something starting mid-December or even closer to Christmas until New Year's Day or perhaps a day or two longer, whereas others do tend to see December as the month for the Christmas rally. But either way, December does not have a track record of an exceptionally good month. And if we do in some indices perhaps see somewhat of a tendency for a slightly better performance just before Christmas, first of all, that isn't a strong tendency either. But well, if overall December is kind of an average month, that would mean that in the first part of the month there was a tendency of losses, which then kind of would make up for later in the month. Okay, it's a slight gain. In the end, December is just about an average month, meaning neither exceptionally good nor exceptionally poor. So much for the hopes for a Christmas rally. And finally, when we calculate a so-called Bayes factor comparing a model that states there are differences between months versus a so-called null model, which basically ignores month as any variable of meaning, we get a Bayes factor of about 2.7 in favor of no differences between months. Which is not to say that there are absolutely no differences between months, but basically within every month, that's important to emphasize, we have differences of such a magnitude that the differences between months appear rather small. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you find this useful, and if you have any ideas or suggestions for future videos, you can leave a comment below this video or just drop an email using the email address shared below this video. Thank you for listening, have a good day, and see you soon.